Cool.
Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my own, I guess, Lord Relictor in this case. It's Tom. What's up, buddy?
Hello, friends.
Uh,
So, sorry about the late start. Partially my fault, and then a little bit of audio issues.
yeah, sure. There's a brief audio issue there at the end. Yes, mostly Tom's
Yeah,
fault, but that's all right. We'll forgive
mostly
him
my
tonight.
fault. A little bit of audio issue.
That's all right. We're going to be talking Stormcast tonight and how we fix them. So that's going to be the main topic du jour, as it were. Right?
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I think they are an eminently fixable army. Let me say that.
Okay.
I've got lots of ideas here. I got many
I mean,
ideas.
I have some ideas,
Right.
and it mostly involves releasing new stuff and dropping points. But
Wow. See, that's literally exactly the. So I'm so glad you said that, Tom, because I am going to take 100% the opposite point of view.
where I can't imagine. It's like you hate me. No,
Sure.
it's
I mean,
like
yes.
it's like every episode. In fact,
Mhm.
apparently.
Well, you're
Um,
wrong, but we'll get to that later. Okay,
Okay, well, we will explore that now, won't we?
sure we will. But the news first.
Indeed. Rumor engine.
Sure, it's up on there. Speaking of Stormcast, this is a Stormcast thing. That's
It
what it
is
is.
apparently. Yeah. Like, how convenient for them to just throw us a softball.
Mm-hmm. Looks like a priesty Stormcast thing. How about that? I'll go a step further.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, could this be our covenant chamber?
Sure, could be, could be.
I
I mean,
kind of like that had been my call. I don't know if you remember that
I
so
do.
long ago.
I do.
That the next one we'd see was the covenant chamber, and if this is a priest staff, I mean,
Look, I mean, it could be any chamber because they could release the ruination chamber, and it could have staffs that look like this, right, or
sure,
whatever.
sure,
Like,
but that's not what this is.
I looked up the original chamber list, right? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
original thing they first published, and it was
sure,
like the
sure.
Lord Commander at the top, and then
Yep,
the command echelon of like the Heraldor Temple, the Judicator Temple, and so on. And then you have
yep,
the Exemplar chambers, Harbinger chambers, and Warrior chambers, and then on the sides you have the Auxiliary chamber, Extremist chamber, Sacrosanct chamber, and Ruination chambers, right? This was the
yep.
original one. This got
So,
modified at some point, but
so
my point is,
auxiliary, not real popular.
yes, correct. Uh, but like my point is, they could just as easily. It could be extremists or anything. It could be
It could
more
be
of the
just
same.
new.
It could be just
It
new.
could just be new.
They don't
Like,
have to
surprise!
necessarily
There's
do the chamber
another
thing.
secret chamber.
Sure.
This is the hidden storm vault chamber that even Sigmar forgot about.
100%. That's true. Like when they did Space Marines sort of
Yeah,
originally and sort of created the chapters for Space
sure.
Marines, right? This didn't happen right away at the beginning necessarily. This kind of evolved a little bit over time, but they were very smart in what they eventually settled on, which was the idea that there's sort of these founding chapters and then there's successor chapters and there's
Yeah,
lost
yeah,
chapters, right?
yeah.
And so it just meant that basically people had a
They
lot
can
of
add anything at any point in time.
right. Both they and the viewer, or sorry, the players had
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of chances to do kind of whatever they wanted. And yes, like I know Extremis is already out there. I'm saying like they could re-release more of a chapter is my point. It doesn't have
Right.
to be a new one. That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to say. Right?
Right.
Like
Right. Right.
we think of it as
This could be sacrosanct to electric boogaloo.
right, exactly. I'm saying like the Extremis chamber wasn't huge in what we got out of that
No,
release.
it
Right?
was like what, 2 kits?
I don't even remember how many kits was total, but it's relatively small. Right?
Dracoff,
Yeah.
dragon.
Okay. I feel like
That's
there was
it,
a third
right?
one, but I don't know, like a hero.
No.
But at any rate, doesn't matter.
Yeah, all of them were mounted. Like all of them were on Dracoffs or dragons.
Yeah, but my
Like, all of
point
them
is
were
that
multi-build.
yes, my point is that it doesn't have to be a new chamber. It could be, but it could
Yeah.
also just
It-
be an expansion.
It could also be, as coaches pointed out, a Cities of Sigmar underworld with a priest, or a war cry warband.
Sure.
I mean, it's very Sigmar-y, let me say that.
I'm-
And very Stormcasty.
It's very Stormcasty, and there's no way we're getting out of. I mean, well, let me say it this way: there's no way the original plan, okay, was to get out of 2020 without a Stormcast release.
Sure.
All right.
I could go with that. Though what I'll say about this is that this is lackluster for the head of a Stormcast staff.
I guess, but you don't know what the rest of the model looks like. Like it could just be.
I'm just saying, if you look at every other like staff head and banner head, it's nothing like this. Like because of how big the models are, they have like big stuff. And because this is small, I'm going to go as far as to say I think that a human is wielding whatever this thing is, not a full-on Stormcast.
Okay. All right. I could see that. It could also just be a unit item. Doesn't have to be a hero thing. Like what you're talking about is largely the items that would be bespoke on heroes. A unit person could be wielding this.
Right. Well, we can talk about it, but I'm going to call and say that this is a human, and in fact, this is part of my solution to... I think they're going to go down the track of what part of my proposal is for fixing Stormcast.
That's fine. And yes, this could be the bottom side of a weapon as well, as has been asked, right? It could just be the image inverted.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. In fact, it would be, well, you can tell where the light's reflecting when they took the picture.
Yep.
So the light's coming in from like
edge.
This side right here, right? Because this is
that
metallic
doesn't mean
paint.
anything to me. Yep.
So like the point is that if it was upside down and pointed, if it was around that way, you wouldn't have light on the side because GW doesn't light their stuff from below when they take pictures.
Right. So it's probably not an inverted staff.
Yeah, so it seems like this is right way up, is what I'm saying, right? Where the light is hitting the metal paint, which is necessarily showing on this image.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It has been, and that's not just some of that's paint, but still you can tell where the light's hitting it where it's not.
Yep.
It's pointed that side up.
Yep.
So anyway, more Stormcast. It's like, again, unless what ends up happening with the current world situation is so disruptive that it literally pushes, 3 or 4 releases into next year, which I mean, let's hope not. We all have our fingers crossed that there's some kind of return to normalcy within a couple months. The reality is we were absolutely getting some kind of Stormcast release this year. They are the statue out front. Right? That's what I'll constantly go to. They are on the cover of the book. They are the statue out front. They are the main faction of this game.
Yep.
Whether you like them or not, none of that doesn't make any of what I just said untrue.
True. Right? Yep.
So, there you go. Okay, cool. What else we got?
Oh yeah, I got this written down, don't I?
You do.
New OBR battalions from the White Dwarf are not so good.
No, they're not.
Thoughts on that?
They're all Volk Morton based, and they're not very good. But it's not that they're like utter trash. Although they're in OBR. It's hard to be that. Tellingly, they're all Mortis Praetorian aligned.
Of course.
Okay, because of course. But they're fine. Like if you wanted to play Mortis and you had a hitch to use Volk Morton since he came Volk Mortian Tian, however you pronounce his name, I don't know. Because he came in the box. You've got options now. I honestly like when they use the battalions in White Dwarf to fill out stuff like this. When they take sort of undervalued stuff and give cool options for people who have a hankering to play something unusual. I eventually want to see an IDK battalion that uses Lotan to some good effect. Really, like seriously.
I remember when they did that for Fire Slayers, they're just not legal.
Well, it's a shame that you got published. That White Dwarf came out 2 days before the General's Handbook. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. They could fix that just by including it in another General's Handbook.
Sure. Well, we all have hopes that the General's Handbook 2020. I don't know what you're cracking, but it's super loud. We all have hopes that there's going to be a lot less pages in GHB 2020 because there's less allegiance abilities. They've all been printed into books now. Almost basically every page there that was an allegiance ability is now in a book. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was still a lot of pages, even in the most recent one.
It was so many pages.
So my answer is yes, please. Just start. You can do these like 3-4 battalions a page. More
right.
sometimes. They've started stacking 6 on a page in some of the books, right?
Yep.
So just do that. Make that a thing. Take your 10, 19, 20 pages, whatever it boils down to, and make them all the battalions. So they all get captured up, and then there's a single source of truth for them. There's another reason to buy the GHB for everybody. Everybody has an easy reference to it. You don't have to try to dig for old white dwarves and stuff like that. So
makes sense.
If you're not going to put them online after 3 to 6 months in a free digital resource, which is how the perfect ideal world, by the by, right? Then put them in here, please, and thank you. And that's easy.
I mean, I agree with that. That would be so fantastic. I noticed that the War Cry, like the 2019 Tome of Champions, has like all the cards that were basically released that year, like in the back.
Oh,
like
yeah, sure.
And so I realized like they could just do something rolling like that with the battalions from White Dwarf of the prior year or whatever. So there's just a lot of opportunities there.
Absolutely.
So,
all right, what else we got?
Preview show this Saturday starts at 8:45 a.m. Eastern time. So early in the morning for us, afternoon for the UK.
Yeah, there'll be a reaction show afterward, so we'll do it here. I'm excited. I'm hoping we actually get to see a model for the Sons of Behemat this Saturday. I feel like in the original presentation we got to see the model. Like if all that had run through in order, we would have seen the models, models, whatever.
Do you think that we will see any more elves?
No, but I think they'll do one more on the 25th, and I think we will there.
You think the 25th is when we'll see all the elves?
Yeah.
It's been so long.
Sure. Like it's going to be a lot longer.
Army in January.
Sure. Let's assume that they actually are able to go back and have the factory working at some point in time in roughly early May, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That would mean that you're still talking about probably the end of May at best case scenario. That's your most positive outlook before things get out into stores, right?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
People better have a month of projects.
Sure. So I mean, your sort of best case is you're a month and probably a week to 2 away, 5 to 6 weeks away from them actually being able to ship product out again.
Yep.
That's just what it is, and fingers crossed. We'll see how it works. We'll see what happens.
Nope.
I don't want anybody jeopardizing their health to make little plastic toys. That's the answer. But I would very much love if they could mitigate that in some way and use the appropriate safety precautions and have everything work again. I'm sure they would love it too. I'm sure they want to sell stuff.
Right. They would like profit. Yes, please. And then finally, we got a lore article for your Giants this week, which is pretty not spectacular. Although I will say in the first image from that article, the flying canals, the flying like buttressed boat canals is really fascinating. I have no idea what city that was for. But they had my attention.
Sure. I mean, the art just kind of, they let people be pretty creative with that art, know?
Sure.
Yeah, I thought I liked the article. I thought it was neat. I thought it was neat that there was a grandfather of giants who got stomped and killed, and then Behemat came up, and he went to sleep. He vomited up all the giants and then went to sleep, and then woke back up until the Stormcast showed up and put him down, or whatever. When Chaos tried to tank him and take over, that god beast. I thought that was cool. That was a good refresher for that, because some of that stuff had been in books before, but it's kind of like hard to find now in a lot of the stories. It's not as clearly laid out, so it was nice to just kind of gather all that together and put it there. Just the references to the kings and how they gather in tribes. My ultimate hope is that giants end up having personality beyond drunken idiots, right? I don't want army of drunken idiots. They will. Sure. Well, I'll say this. Even if they don't in the book, I don't care. I can add that. They will once I get a hold of them.
Sure.
So.
They'll be fine. It'll be fine. That's the news?
Yeah, that's basically the news. Yes. Not a lot. Obviously, these are some slow weeks, but looking forward to the review show this weekend. I'm sure we're going to see some exciting stuff. So there you go. All right. Cool. Let's talk about some pick of the week, man.
Yeah. So, for me, I'm gonna go with friend of the show, Meth, in his Rantcast.
Mr. Mephisto, yes.
Mr. Mephisto. He is going to be doing a content giveaway. A generous donor has given like 1,500 points of Stormcast models, like, to him to give away. And so he is having, I'm gonna like his next two shows. I think it's Rantcast 44 and 45. If you comment in the comments and mention the entry, or if you mention it in the streaming Twitch chat when they're recording, they are going to you'll be entered into like a drawing, and it's specifically for new players. And so what it is if you are not a new player, you can put your name in, but it's on the honor system that you give it to a new player.
So it's meant to help somebody start a new army.
Yeah, to help somebody. Well, to help it's specifically for
help a new player start a new
help a new player. Right.
That's what I meant.
It's not just like, oh, I need my 7th army. Sure. No, they're aiming at like people who are just getting started. They want to like help get them kickstarted into the hobby. So, yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, he has that coming up. I wanted to let people know about it.
Very nice. We'll put the link down below to the show in question. For mine, I want to throw out, and again, shout out somebody else in the community who's also making awesome stuff in this trying time, which is our good buddy 2+ Tough, who put together a draft set of 1-player Warcry rules. So you can run campaigns and basically, solo play Warcry, turn it into a single-player game. That might sound strange to some people, I imagine, but actually, like, there's quite a few single-player miniatures games in the markets. They've been becoming more popular over the past couple of years. A lot of, like, indie producer stuff. There's several single-player, or, games out there that can be run in single-player format, where you're running against sort of the AI of the game system itself or whatever. AI. And so this is another take on that. So I will link that over to you so you can see where you can download that from. I think Doug did an awesome job with that, and I think that's a very cool thing when there's a lot of people who might be getting their warbands ready but haven't really had a chance to play with them yet because maybe they haven't be able to have any people over.
Not everybody has a whole host of kids to play against.
Sure.
I mean, my kids are keeping me busy on Warcry. It's actually what I'm working on right now. But not everybody has that. And so if you don't have children to do that for you, you can just play alone.
Nice. Yeah, so there you go. Yes, if you don't happen to have other people in your house who you can press gang into service of playing against you, if you're like myself, then this is an option for you. So there you go. I don't think my wife, obviously we did our wife show last week and that was a lot of fun, but my wife is perfectly supportive of my hobby. I don't know what in the world I would do to get her to want to sit down and play a game of Warcry. That's the most comical thing ever. That's not going to happen. Not her cup of tea, and that's fine. I wouldn't want it to be. She wouldn't enjoy it.
Right.
All right. So Tom, let's talk about some hobby time, man. What you working on, buddy? You working on some Warcry? Is that what it is? What specifically?
Yeah, all the Warcry, in fact. So, I've been building trees. Let me just say, the newest Warcry, like, terrain box that launched, I don't know if you've seen this, Vince. But it's, like, my favorite one they've released so far. Nice, pretty Warcry. Called the Soul Drain Forest.
Okay.
It comes with 2 tree kits, like full tree kits, and then like a sprue, like the ruins sprue, right? Like the ground ruins sprue for the Stormcast stuff.
Yep.
And it's like $90. Like those tree kits for Sylvaneth are $50 a piece.
Okay.
It's like an amazing deal. Because, like you're getting functionally like $135 of product for $90. Then if you can get a discount, even more. By the way, somebody asked about the trees. These are just the new Sylvaneth Wildwood kit.
Yeah, and you put like multiples of those rings together to make a
right, and then you do like
But
yep.
you got to touch tips.
Yep, you touch the little tips.
It's a lot of discussion when you're playing Sylvaneth now about touching tips.
It's true.
Yep.
And can you fit that in? And so I've been building those trees, and they're a nice kit. I've been building a bunch of Storm Fiends. So on one hand, I sold all of my Skaven, or most of it, and I also built Storm Fiends and magnetized all their weapons this week.
Did you put the dumb brain rats on the back?
Of course not.
Good, you made the right choice. Never put the brain rats on the back. That was a trap. You navigated it successfully. You found and removed traps.
So it's funny. I was really mixed on weapons for Storm Fiends, and so I was like, well, maybe I can magnetize them. And I started looking at it. I'm like, this is the easiest kit to magnetize in the world. And so I did that.
Yeah, because they all just have like flat arms with like weapons that snap on. Yes.
Yep. And then they have like the best magnetization spots. So I've been working on my son's warband, and I think his stuff is basically almost all base coated. Like, so from like it's like tabletop ready almost. I need to do the bases on them, but they're basically done. I'm putting together some Skaven for that. I had a bunch of miscellaneous Skaven. It just dawned on me like how helpful the Underworld's warbands are.
Okay.
For like army building. Sure. Because like in the Underworld's warband, like you get like one of each of the different units at least, like the different troop types. And between that and some other Skaven I had a perfect like setup for Skaven with that and a box of Storm Fiends. And so I'm doing that for mine. And then my daughter has some Sylvaneth coming in. So, and I'm excited to help her get that put together. She's making good progress on painting. I ordered a bunch of I had all of the Warcry card packs, and I just got tired of them for storage. So I got a bunch of boxes, and I'm to store my cards in. And so I'm more cleanly systematizing that, and yeah. So we're all in on Warcry right now because the kids are all in on it, and so it's easy to do. And since we're in lockdown, they're quick, fast games, and yeah. So you're gonna probably see me doing a lot of Warcry stuff in the near future. And there may be some hypothetical content that comes out of this, so we'll see.
We'll see. Yes, indeed. That boy, oh boy.
I'm not making any commitments. I said at the beginning of the year, the New Year's resolution was to produce some content this year, and
hey, you got 8 months to go.
I still have 8 months, but we'll see if this actually happens.
Sure, so, I predict you'll put a video up on December 27th.
Well, I made a new Twitter account for the new content, so it's official because I clearly have a new Twitter account for it.
Oh, there you go. As we all know, that's the big investment right there.
It is. It's where the real money's at. And so if you're starting all over with followers, it's just the worst. But that said, and all of that will become known once I've produced content. I haven't produced content, so I'm not actively promoting or spruiking it.
So sure. We'll see. Nice. All right, fair enough. There might be a show we do up in the future coming up around Warcry, actually, more specifically, and digging into some more of the guts of Warcry and taking a look at it now, months on. So I think that'll be real good. Tom will be real ready to dig into that and its value.
I will spend so much time playing all of the warbands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be great. You'll have a much different opinion, I suspect, now, coming back to it, right? So yeah, totally. That's good. Right on. For me, obviously, I finished up the last sort of Seraphon stragglers that I had for stuff I had outside of that I didn't manage to get finished in the 24-hour challenge. So now my Seraphon army's done, so that's good. That makes, that was army 16, so that's pretty good. And I think I ended up with the final count of about 27 or 800 points of Stormcast. I don't remember exactly. Somewhere between 27 and 2,800 Stormcast. Good night. 27 and 2,800 points of Seraphon. So that's cool. And that army's now ready to go. I shared up some pictures this last weekend.
I loved your Joe Exotic.
That's not how you say it. It's Joe Exotic.
Joe Exotic. You're Joe Exotic writing the Tiger Carnosaur. It's a genius idea. It's striking when the iron's hot. That's
what we're here for. Yeah, that's right in line, by the way, with all classic Lizard Man names because they all had goofy names. Like
it's true.
That were just spelled funny, but if you phonetically pronounced it, their name would be like Teeny Weeny or something like that, or TikTok or whatever. Seraphon are supposed to have silly names that that when you phonetically pronounce them, you didn't realize the joke. That's the idea. That when you read them, you're like, what does that even say? Because it's full of Q's and U's and I's and extra H's. And then you phonetically pronounce it and you get the joke.
You're like, relatedly, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
No, that's fine.
Just to talk about Warcry, like, I have lots of thoughts about that, but I love your paint scheme. Let me just say that.
Sure.
About your tiger paint scheme.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. So finish that up. I wanted to turn on, like, after doing that kind of a project, it was time to turn to something more singular. And so we're repainting Sarah Angel here. She's real big. You can see there. So this was a limited edition statue from back in the 90s, and I know that because on the bottom of it, it actually says this is number 998 of 5,000. Sarah Angel. It's from 1998. And wow. So there you go. This was given to me by Emily Yacheko. I don't know. Her last name confounds me forever. Her wings are very big. They're over here. So you can see that's her wings that normally sit on her. So she's the classic Sarah Angel. So I'm real excited about this. I had to do a bunch of work to fix her. She didn't survive the past 22 years intact because she's made of, like, I don't know, something. Porcelain? I'm not sure. She's not made of, like, plastic.
Bad plaster is the answer.
Plaster is probably the answer, yes. And so I had to do all that, and I'm very excited about her. Sarah Angel was always my preeminently favorite Magic card, and so, I've had a love of that card since I first started the game. I remember the first Sarah Angel I got, and then the next 30 I got of every edition ever, going back to my Alpha Sarah Angels and everything else. So,
very important. All those. I didn't get any of those.
I have a bunch of those again still, so that's fine. I have a ton of them now. Again, I made sure to go back and get all those, as well as every angel from across the ages. So, it became a very popular card type, which for obvious reasons. So that's just a thing for me. Obviously, that has absolutely zero gaming stuff at all. There's nothing gaming to that. It is literally.
You're not planning on competing with them?
I don't know if she'll ever go to a competition. I'm not thinking about that, honestly. I just want to paint her because it's fun, and I love her.
Love on her.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Somebody asked where the twirly cane is from behind me. This is a wizard staff. It came from a Renaissance fair in 1997. Yes, that sounds right. It's a year older than that Sarah Angel. And for some reason I've kept it for years and years and years. But it's a very tall wizard staff. Yes. Yep. I've moved houses so many times. I've thrown everything I had away so many times, and like I remember moving in the Dodge Colt, which I'm sure you know that is not a large car. You remember the Colt, Tom?
No. I had a Colt.
Yeah, and
I had a 91. You had an 89?
88, yeah. 88. And everything that was in it, everything that I owned had to fit into that car. Not a large car. And somehow...
it was a hatchback, though.
It was a hatchback, yes. And somehow that stick stuck with me the whole time. I always kept it.
I saw the wheels fall off that thing.
You did. Were you in the car when the wheel fell off?
No, I was behind you, Ed. When we were in the RV parking lot.
It wasn't wheels.
On Christmas Eve.
Yeah, it was a wheel. One wheel fell off the car.
Just one wheel. That's it.
It was fine. It was fine.
It's fine.
No big deal. Yeah. Well, life's funny. Anyway. Yeah. Look, she held together for a long time, and then the wheel came off. Did. Literally, the wheel came off. So.
Literally the wheel.
All right.
Yeah, that happened.
So let's talk about some Stormcast, man.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get this out of the way first. Okay. Let's set some principles here. Start some founding principles. Since we're going to be fixing a thing, as always, we start with guiding principles. Everybody, whenever this is my problem. Whenever people try to fix things, they immediately jump to the solution. Okay?
Right.
That's the last thing you do. You start with a guiding principle. So guiding principle number 1.
Yep.
I'll phrase this as a question I think we'll both agree with, or statement I think we'll both agree with.
Yep.
Sorry. Stormcast need attention in the modern meta. They have become non-competitive in too much of a degree. Like, they have fallen outside the norm of what we would want, where we would want them to be in the fat middle. Agreeable statement?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Thing the second.
Let me say it this way. They seem just a tad bit weak. Like, these are like 42, 44% somewhere.
No,
there?
lower than that. They fell below 40 on the most recent
chart.
chart.
Oh, did they? Okay.
They fell out of even the wide fat middle.
Okay.
So that is a statement, right? So, okay.
Yep.
If we both agree with that. Statement the second. What we would aim for them to be is a compelling, interesting, and roughly competitive faction, right? We are not looking to make them overpowered, or we don't want to end up with, like, when they remade some Space Marine stuff in 40K recently, you had challenges because they overpowered, like, Iron Hands, and then somebody else, I don't remember who else got this treatment, but basically they went through a couple rotations where they were kind of over the line, right?
Right.
So we want to avoid that. In our perfect world, they would be the middle of the pack. They would be 50% on the nose, sort of in the meta win percentage. Because they would be the thing around which we balance everything else. Fair statement?
Yeah.
Okay, we lost your audio for a second, but you're back.
Yep.
Okay. Statement the third, as far as guiding principles go. The range is beyond huge and unwieldy, and even though the right answer would probably be to just jettison a bunch of kits and focus on, like, the right answer here would be triage, right? And just, like, start saying there's some of you we can't save, and would be to toss those kits and say they're dead, get rid of them, and focus on having a few units. We are not going to...
Which kits would you jettison?
This is what I'm saying. We're not going to do that, okay? That might be, like, if you were to take the cold calculated, like, gaming-only answer, that's probably the right answer, okay?
Like, you're saying the true balance, but, like, the answer that pursues true balance.
Yes, and that's not what we're after, okay?
Right.
Yep. Because... 1, a lot of people love different models in the range. 2, it is the poster child of this. 3, it's a relatively recent range. Jettisoning kits is nonsense in this time period. They've been in existence and played.
I mean, I don't know. They could probably jettison some kits, and the life would just move on.
They shouldn't be. And 4, we can create value and interest for most of these things. In the same way that if Cities of Sigmar can do it and have relatively interesting things function across multiple different, unit types, then we can do it here too. Okay? Agreed statement? So we're not going to recommend...
I agree with all that. Yep.
Okay. All right? So we don't cut anything. Okay? That's the short thing there.
So consequently, you would say we don't add anything. Like, that's a corollary that I'm hearing kind of simmering underneath the middle.
Right, correct. Somebody, and just to answer a comment here, somebody said they won't be 50% because they are the normie starter army and therefore will have a large percentage of bad players. Maybe, maybe not. I'm saying if we could ideally regress for all of that in the data, they should be the 50% army. What I'm saying is not a statement of... I'm talking about our goals, not a lagging indicator, right? What you're trying to measure the real thing when you say that, Donald. That's a lagging indicator. I'm saying what we're aiming at designing is saying, what are the components of an army that would fall here? That's what we're going to try to shoot for.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. It's a design principle, not a metric. All right.
As an aside, have you ever bought the Stormcast Warrior Chamber Warcry Warband?
Yeah, I have it. Yes. I have all the warbands. I did a big Magic card binder, by the way. That was my solution for all
you did a binder? Yeah, no. I did boxes. You could play Magic with this deck.
It's big. I know. That's so big. Yeah.
I have 30 card decks, and it's not going to fit.
Sure. Well, you know what helps? Binders.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, okay. All right. So, good. Okay. So we've got all that.
Yep.
We're down with all that. All right.
Yep.
Is there any other guiding principles that you think we should have on the table here?
It should be user friendly.
I like that one. Yes, I think that's an excellent guiding principle. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is and will remain one of the starter entryways into the game for the foreseeable future, right? It will be the flagship faction. Yep. So hence we need to make it friendly to new players, right?
Yep. Like, I agree. And so when I say that, what I mean by that is like it should, like rules and stuff like that should default to obvious and easy. Yep. And so it should ideally it would be the type of army that is quick to learn, like difficult to master.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean you can't have layers or complexity in interesting, discoverable ways. You can go for an Othello type build, right?
Yep.
Sure, or a Go or something like that, right? Yeah, absolutely. And then, so final guiding principle that I want to put on the table is we're not going to fundamentally reconstitute the army into a new form. That is to say, like, no part of what we should recommend should be fundamentally changing the character of the army. Like, for example, okay, Stormcast are all 1 wound now, and we put them all on 32 mil bases, and they all drop to, like, you know, Blood Reaver points.
So you're saying
like
they should never design a book that would Fire Slayer them? Like Fire Slayers went from 1 wound to 2 wounds. They went from a horde army to like
to an elite
semi-elite.
I would call it reverse Fire Slayering, but yeah, sure.
Like exactly. Yeah.
Yes, they are a relatively elite army. That's the idea of the thing. You know, they should stay in the relatively elite army status, right? They are not the most elite. But they are definitely not a horde. Okay? How do those sound for principles? Your sound goes in and out. I don't know what you're doing that's turning your sound on and off, but something.
I'm turning it on and off because I'm crinkling and I'm making noise as I'm unwrapping these things.
Well, then keep turning it on and off. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Like I'm trying to actually help you out and not be distracting to you and the viewers.
Oh, God, go back to being muted. Okay. Wonderful. You're so terrible. Yeah. All right.
I'm efficient.
Sure. That's what it is. Okay. So with those guiding principles in mind, okay.
Yep.
Let's now set about to actually thinking through how we take this army and evolve its place.
Yep.
All right. So let's start again at a high level. What's your 40,000 foot view pitch for how do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first? Let's just give the pitch, not individual solutions, the pitch.
No, I'll let you go.
Okay, here's my pitch. All right.
Yep.
One, let's assume we're going to get a new book this year.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of put that on the table. It seems quite reasonable we would get a new book this year.
Yep.
Okay. And so I don't care if a new chamber is part of this or not, is my answer to that question.
You don't care if they release 10 new kits?
No, not really. I really don't. I mean, like, I think that would be much. I think that, but when you put a number like that out there, that would probably be a bit much, right?
Well, for Sacrosanct, isn't that what we got?
Sacrosanct was a very big expansion to launch along with AOS 2. You'd wonder if you'd get that kind of thing in an off year. But anyways, no, that's neither against my design, my plans, or for it. Also, let me say one other thing. I would just like to point out the number of dislikes we have in the comments right now, as it's very high for this point in the show. This is what happens when you talk about Stormcast. They draw some hate. So if you're watching now and you like this discussion, hey, hit like. And then help balance out all those people who are clearly very angry at us for even mentioning Stormcast. All right. So
it's
anyway,
delightful.
It is
your hate is delicious. Continue.
Boy, oh boy. Sorry, we talked about Stormcast for those people. At any rate, so here's my 40,000 foot vision. I don't care if they release new kits or not, but I assume there's a new book.
Yep.
And what needs to be done is, one, we need to invest actual allegiance abilities into them. Okay? They don't have any right now. They have an allegiance ability that's like a sub-allegiance ability of any other army that has it.
Okay, say that again. Like, what do you mean by that?
Their ability to basically deploy from the heavens. To be in reserve. Okay. is their primary allegiance ability.
And
what are you anding me on?
There's more. There's more in their allegiance abilities.
Sure. Okay. So what are their other allegiance abilities, Tom?
When they show up, they have shock and awe, which means that they're -1 to hit for the turn until your next hero phase after they show up. That doesn't trigger just when you come down from the heavens. It triggers every time you set up. So every teleport.
Are there some other allegiance abilities we're getting here too, Tom?
No, just that.
Oh, okay. I said real allegiance abilities. Okay. Don't make me pull a Magneto on you. I said real allegiance abilities. I could do the meme right now. All right. And pull up like Skaven and say perfection. Right. Because if you put those two things next to each other.
Right.
Are we even, or cities or whatever. Right. In fact, let's just pick cities since that can contain Stormcast.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not even remotely in the same universe, right? Like cities, It's just like 72 different abilities plus the cities thing. Like, yes, a minor buff when they lightning strike. Off of, by the way, an allegiance ability that gets turned off in a terrible scenario.
Sorry, it's till the end of the turn. I'm being corrected by 100 people in the comments. Not until the next hero phase. I don't care. If you get into combat, you're -1 to hit on any setup.
That's super great. It's a bad ability, and it doesn't matter. So there's what I'll say. They don't have allegiance abilities, so at a high level, they need real allegiance abilities. Okay, and two
that aren't bonus spells, that aren't bonus prayers.
Well, I'll talk about exactly what I want them to be, but I want them to have a suite of functional allegiance abilities that drive playstyles.
Okay,
that's the point, right? If they are a starter army, then they should have at least a fairly obvious playstyle, as well as some divergent ability to utilize different playstyles, right? Because you want them to be, they're going to be popular. You want people to be able to play them in a couple different ways. You can use different allegiance style abilities to shape that. You can also then support that with the chambers and with the, battalions and other things. This doesn't have to carry all the weight, but you can use that to inform it.
Yep.
Okay. You can even use it to inform certain, chambers and things like that, right? So think, for example, of something like the ogres and how regular ogres do damage when they charge, and your Everwinter units, or your Beastclaw Raiders units, your BCR units, bring the Everwinter with them and stuff like that. We can talk about whether or not those abilities are good or bad, but they do create like this concept that there's different things going on in the army, right?
Sure. Yep.
On an army that's a quarter of the size. When I'm talking about ogres. Probably. I don't know the number. I don't have the kit number in front of me. Let's say somewhere between a quarter and a third of the size of just war scrolls.
Sure.
So, and then what we're going to do is, my solution is very simple. I don't want to drop points. Points should not go down. Okay? Everybody wants to drop points all the time. That's always the cry. Points need to go down. No. Stop that. Okay? We cannot keep doing this. Like, the more we keep dropping points, the more we race to the bottom. It cannot be the world we live in. Okay,
it's just a horse race. It's okay.
It is literally a toilet that you're just swirling down. Okay, and you can't keep, because you lower the points on this, then somebody else wants their points brought down, and then that causes a cascade where somebody else wants their points brought down, and then somebody else, and then somebody else, and then all of a sudden everything is too cheap, and we're gonna have to eventually bring a bunch of points up, and everybody's gonna hate that. Okay. So I don't want to bring any points down. What I do want to do, however, is make the War Scrolls worth the points that are printed on them. And so my concept here is very simple. The 40,000 foot idea is, the problem with Stormcast is that ultimately it was designed in a slapdash fashion. There was no great grand plan to the army. It wasn't like a singular book where they sat down and said, this is how the army works. This is what we want it to do. These units do this. These units do that. This is the playstyles we're supporting, right? It was split over like 5 releases. The beginning stuff came out at the launch of AOS. They had no idea what they wanted, what this product was going to look like in 4 years, right? And so it was just all over it's all over the shop, right?
Sure. Yep.
The new book that comes out is going to step back, look at all of this, re-roll things, roll ROLE,
Yep.
the various scrolls, and make sure they firmly sit in that roll. Side note, I don't want much synergy in this army.
Interesting. Okay.
This army should have some simple buffs here and there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Like, sure, your Lord Castellan can do his lantern thing and buff a unit. I'm good with that.
Yep.
Right? And maybe like a Relictor dude can heal a guy. Or whatever. Okay? Like there can be some very simple buffs that get put around here or there. And when I say simple, I mean simple. Right? Things like +1 to save, +1 to hit, things that are relatively easy to concept.
So what I'm hearing you say is they are way too synergistic right now. Because that's not the world we live in.
I would probably roll it back when I'm redesigning the War Scrolls. Yes, that's correct. I would roll back synergy. And what instead I want to see them be, okay? Because they're not a combined arms type of mixed force, ultimately. Like, they're not the Cities of Sigmar. They're not Skaven, okay?
But they can be with their current War Scroll suites.
What they should feel like is you're playing the superheroes of the Mortal Realms, okay?
Sure.
These guys are Sigmar's finest, and they should be relatively independent operators with basic power pair combinations. A hero and his unit, right?
Yep.
This hero buffs this unit. It's not about getting 5 heroes stacked onto one thing to make a Death Star or something like that, right?
Right.
It's about, like, this guy is with this unit, he provides them a Benny, and they go, and they are... Right? These are the guys...
They function on their own.
They're independent operators. And by the way, they don't always need the hero. Lots of times, these guys are basically heroes.
Right. And what I would say is that I would argue that we see some of this already with Sacrifice Saint. Because they self-buff.
Sure.
Like, so, like, I'm thinking about, like, the Sequitors. Like, they're like, we need to be tanky, rerolls. We need to, reroll saves. We need to be punchy, reroll hits.
Right. True.
Like, they self-buff. Like, they are truly self-sufficient. They don't need heroes buffing them.
Right. And that's the kind of, like, what I want to see is, ideally, like, a little bit of synergy has to be in the game because you also have to learn the game. Right?
Yep.
And so part of that is teaching how buffs and kind of synergies and stuff like that works. Right?
Yep.
And, somebody said, isn't that how Rotbringers work? Yeah, kind of. Some of the Rotbringer stuff is very much like that. And I think that's a correct principle. Now, just because we would follow that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're turning them into Nurgle. There are still lots of differences between these two armies. But yes, ostensibly, like, what Stormcast, the way you read Stormcast narratively and you see them is like a small group of them can drop down and turn the tide of a battle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so, like, ostensibly, they should be...
Hold on, can I?
I saw LLV's point, and yes, his point is like be careful because they can be allied into other things. They can show up in Cities of Sigmar. Fine.
So here's a counterpoint to that, LLV. What I would say is this: I think that's perfect. Let them be awesome. Points for what they are, self-contained. Because guess what? They need to be the perfect allies. That's kind of the narrative point.
Yes, and again, we're not pushing it OP.
Right.
They're just always good at their role. What I'm actually saying is when we re-rollify them, right?
Yes.
What happens is they become an exemplary version, to use a little bit of loaded language to make a Stormcast illusion, right? They become a good, strong version of that thing.
Yeah.
Okay? So, that's my high-level pitch.
Okay, so
I don't need more bodies. I don't need more anything else. I want to take this army at the scroll level and the allegiance level back to formula and re-rack.
And so if you are envisioning that, where do you feel storm hosts fit in?
Sure. So specifically,
because if you're baking into them more set roles, more set, like, how light do storm hosts need? Because right now storm hosts are super heavy in this army.
So give an example of what you like. Walk everybody through what you mean, because I'd like you to support that with an example.
Okay. So right now storm hosts, they set, like, let me just start this way. Right now when you use a storm host, any storm host, your item and your command trait are set. Period. There's no wiggling around it. There's no, like, keyword There's no keyword bingo that's happening.
Where it's not like the first guy on Maw Crusher has to have this thing. It's like, well, I'll take a different guy. Yeah, I get it.
Right, like there's none of that. And so like anytime you play a Storm host, you automatically throw out all the standard command traits, and arguably the best standard command trait is in the generics. And so you throw that out completely. And then you also lose an item. And there's really no good battalions in all of Stormcast right now. 0. And so by doing that, you basically lose all item selections as well currently in the current book.
Obviously, in the new book, we would have valuable battalions. Like that's just a gimme, but whatever.
But it's just what I'm saying is it really dictates your choice, and a lot of the abilities are largely throwaway in the current design, and so there's not a lot of incentive to do them. And so the question is do you do a lot of just like random abilities that are kind of throwaway that and just make the whole like thing Storm host mechanic lighter on the design space, where it doesn't have as much of an impact, where you have artifacts more readily accessible, or command trait flexibility? Like, what do you do with that? Or do you lean into the heavy?
This is actually an easy answer.
And have it dictate more. Go ahead.
Okay. So think about how so one of the things that's happened with the chamber concept since it was sort of, introduced is that they've gotten very refined at designing these in a way that supports specific play styles, armies, unit combinations, etc.
They've gotten much better. Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So let's take a gander back to a recent show where we are looking, and let's look at something like the Seraphon spawnings or whatever, right?
Yep.
Those have a fairly obvious but not overtly constraining way that they seem to want to be used. Now, whatever, we can talk about the whole, Starborn versus Coalesced and that kind of thing. So that's not what I mean. Let's just take that out of the equation for the moment. What I'm referencing here is, and no, I would not chamber lock the battalions. Somebody asked me that. No, absolutely not. No, I would not. No, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that, okay? What we can do is we can take the... By the way, you see this in the recent Khorne book as well.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, there's lots of books that utilize this tech I'm about to describe. So, here's this book. Here's this chamber, sorry. What it does is it benefits this particular unit / playstyle. Right? Okay. So, like, Thunder Lizards in Seraphon says monsters get 2 wounds, and your chief, if he's on a monster, gets this Benny, and like it's incentivizing you to play a monstery force, but not an all monster force. You can play with like 2 or 3 monsters, and that's still a very worthwhile selection of your spawning or whatever, right?
Yes.
And the same thing with
Boulderhead is still useful with only a couple monster trucks.
Correct. Yep, exactly. So, like, what those chambers need to be is more elegantly designed to focus on specific units. This can also do some of the lifting by the by to make certain units more worth it, so we don't have the problem LLV was talking about.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yep.
Right? So, because one of LLV's concerns is, well, if you ramp, like, let's say you just ramp Liberators up to be, like, the most super-duper anvil in the history of anvils. They're just the best. They make Petrifex Elite Mortec Guard look like chumps. Okay? Fine. All right? Then the problem is going to be everybody can ally with them, and suddenly they show up in every army as everybody's anvil. Right?
Yep.
But you can carry some of that weight through battalions and chambers. Right? You can say...
They become super tanky in the right chamber, which isn't accessible to allies.
Exactly. Yep. They go from good tank to great tank, or something like that. Right?
Yep. No, I agree.
And that lets you then define better your roles. And no, you don't need to chamber lock them, but you can push and nudge toward using certain items, right? Like, or sorry, using certain, I don't mean items as far as magic items. I meant like
design.
Using certain units. You can have like this particular Storm host is focused on, it gives a Benny to Liberators, and Sequitors, and it's fairly evenly distributed. And again, don't think of the current scrolls. Imagine there's more parity between those two, right? So great, they're the and everybody in the army gets sort of this kind of defensive Benny maybe or something, or the command ability is a defensive Benny that can be evoked, whatever.
Yeah.
Right, and that kind of then shapes not your whole army, but the theory of the case when it comes to that. Right.
Yep.
So I think that's how you shape that, and that's what makes sense to me. Right.
I don't hate that.
So okay, cool. That's my theory of the case. Now I've got a lot more to say on this, and I'll get into specific like details and things like that. Let me say one more thing along our guiding principle of keeping it simple. Okay.
Yep.
Things that they currently lack that a lot of people have, that they often get called out for, is that they don't have like the real fancy shiny stuff that a lot of armies have. Like, I don't know, some like maybe some stuff in the activation wars or whatever, right? I don't want them to have any of those things. I don't think they need those things to compete, which is yet another reason why I want them to be relatively strong, good versions of their thing.
I think you design the rules around the activation wars without actually giving them the activation wars. And so, for example, you make it so that the triggering of their rerolls is happening at the end of the charge phase rather than at the beginning of the combat phase. With sequiturs.
Sure.
My proposal is that what it means is that they still stay tanky and defensive regardless of the or give it to them ever at the beginning of every hero phase or whatever. You know, like make that call, whatever that buff is, much earlier in the turn.
That's fine. Yes, I'm okay with that. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yes, in other words, don't fall victim to it. Just have your stuff kind of work, so you get to kind of ignore certain elements of that. Right. Yeah, that's fine. Because ultimately, I do want to keep these interactions, these spaces that they play in, relatively straightforward.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And again, we're not going to cut kits, so I can't get rid of anything. So I've got to find uses for everything that's here, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so would you do anything different? Let me say that.
I would be the terrible person who would... I think that they need to add... Like, let me just say this. You don't need to adjust... you don't need to adjust points if you're redesigning all the scrolls.
Yep.
Okay, so I agree with that. If you are going to keep, but you need to be more aggressive if abilities are staying the same on a lot of scrolls. You need to be more aggressive with pointing. The other thing that I would say is that I think that there really is a place for like devotees of Sigmar in the Stormcast Eternals army.
Okay.
And so I've said it before a couple times. I'm going to say it again. Like, I think an Order of Aesir army of like witch hunters and like faithful and like servants, people who aspire to become Stormcast. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a function in an army like this, a support function. I don't want to see like armies of like 40 blocks of units. That's not what I want to see.
That's the inevitability of what you're talking about.
No, because if they're not fulfilling these types of roles, then no, I'm not.
Like, you'd have to walk this line really carefully, because otherwise what's going to happen is you get Marauders.
Yes, and that's
not. Do you want Marauders, Tom? Because that's how you get Marauders. You have this beautiful chaos faction of elite, heavy armored dudes, and what actually swarms the board is a bunch of Viking barbarian numpties.
Right, and if they made the flagellant mistake, then yes. But if those pieces are inherently more expensive units of like groups of priests that do like group chants and buff units and do support things, then no, you don't end up with Marauders. And so there is a design space here, I think, that would be really interesting for like a witch hunter like squad, a small unit or whatever. Or like I think that there are tools here. That's what I'm saying. Of design space that they can play around with the priestly cast, with these human servitors. That would be a really interesting chamber to unlock. That's what I would say. I
would be fine with it if it was just heroes. I wouldn't want a single unit on the board. Like, that is to say, multi-person person unit.
I wouldn't mind units of like 3 witch hunters.
Okay, I'll allow it. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're all like 4 or 5 wound dudes. Yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah. Sure. Like that's what I'm saying. Like having these like little like these really interesting different types of units. And yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, no, that's a cool idea. I could get behind that. My fear with introducing the human element is it like just regular numpty humans, is that almost any time
flatulence, like they swarm the board.
Many times when this happens, what happens is then this becomes the way to run the army. Do you run trolls and big squigs, or do you run tons of goblins? It's always tons of goblins. Like if you want to play with the power version, right? Again, we're just talking from I'm not talking from your personal aesthetic perspective, because I find this to be the least aesthetically compelling. But I'm saying, like, as it stands right now, competitively, you run a ton of goblins.
Right, and that's part of
Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights, or giant blocks of Marauders. The answer is giant blocks of Marauders.
Well, that's part of it. That's partially how the scenarios are currently designed, though.
Yes, I understand that, and that's the problem. There's such an immediate, again, exempt all rules. Ipsum lorem every rule on the scroll, right? And the unit of 40 has an innate Benny over the unit of 20 or 10.
Oh, always.
And so you have to design to that if you don't want them to become the thing that becomes everybody does.
This is more of a systemic problem with how the scenarios are currently designed. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
But I like the idea of like sort of elite stuff. Like, sure, human priests or warrior priests or witch hunters, small units of that kind of stuff following around. That'd be a cool idea. Like, especially units of witch hunters, units of like a unit of witch hunters makes sense in an AOE in a Stormcast army. It takes 3 of them to kind of be on par, right?
With a right, absolutely. And I'm okay like not even giving them 5 wounds each. Like make them 3 or 4 wounds. Or like I'm okay with that.
Should be like 4 wound dudes.
Like Endrin Riggers get away with that. Endrin Riggers are running around units of 3 Endrin Riggers with 2 wounds each.
Yeah, I think the answer is the I don't want to dive too deep into this because it's getting in the weeds, but sure, like the answer is like 3 witch hunters with 4 wounds each. They're effectively all heroes. Think like they're the good version of Varangard, right? It's basically right. But not as sort of overwhelmingly. They're not 1 in 10 bajillion or whatever the number is. Okay, and that would be a cool introduction to that.
Operate amongst the Stormcast, and that would be my point.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I dig that idea. That's good. I could see something like that. That'd be a great addition to the army. Because again, it's not bringing out just giant blocks of flagellants, right?
It's not changing how the army plays.
The army should be winning with its units of 5 and 10 and maybe 15 dudes. That's the challenge here, right? We've got to win with those numbers. Okay.
That means you have to. Well, and I would argue that points though to a bigger systemic problem with scenario design and how low unit or low model count armies compete.
But it doesn't have to. Okay. Yes, You're right. Like theoretically, sure, but it doesn't have to. Okay. You have to be aware of that innate penalty, right? And design according to it.
Sure, I would agree with that.
All right. Like that's not. Yes, you're correct. There is an innate bias there towards the larger units and towards those kinds of things.
Yes.
In the current system. So let's just fix that. Right? Let's just fix that by having them be better at their jobs, pound for pound, where they can actually accomplish what they need to do. You're
suggesting something like tactical superiority, each model counts for 2 models.
No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. No, I don't want them. The ogres have that, and I don't think anybody else should really get that. Like maybe giants, whenever giants come out, have some weird version of that. But nobody
tactical superiority, once they have an objective, the objective can't be taken from that unit until they're eliminated.
Well, I actually think you can do it just on numbers. I don't think you need to do this through a rule. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe I'm overtly hopeful. But here's my argument. Let me lay this out for you, Tom. You ready? Here we go. Let's take all the damage that like so okay. Before I get into this, let's split it out like this. So let me trot out let me rapid fire ideas at you here, okay? And as Martin pointed out, yes, I kept saying chamber instead of storm host. And yes, sorry, I'm using those things interchangeably.
Yep.
But yes.
Because he doesn't play Stormcast. And I don't.
Hey, I have a Stormcast army. It's right over there.
I do. Everybody has a Stormcast army. That's why we're talking about it.
Well, mine's painted. Yours isn't.
Mine are on the appropriate size bases.
Hey, so are mine. All my Stormcasts are on the right size bases. At any rate, okay. So let's talk basic principles. Yes, I would bring out the chambers, and I would filter some of the chamber stuff into allegiance abilities. Okay.
Wait, you're saying you would filter the storm hosts?
No. The storm hosts stay the storm hosts. Anvils and hammers and celestial vindicators. Those are still all storm hosts. They're whatever they are, right? Yes. Chambers are warrior chamber and extremist chamber and all the stuff we talked about earlier.
Yeah, so you're saying like extremist chamber units have a certain rule and warrior chamber units have a certain rule and yada yada.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Like Skaven, like ogres, like goblins for that matter, right?
Nope, they don't work that way. The moon grants all those stupid abilities.
Nonetheless, it's still a thing, right? Like the moon affects by that stuff, yeah. We can argue about how good the moon is, but nonetheless, there are plenty of examples of this, right? So, like, all of the units in the warrior chamber get this. All of the units in the sacrosanct chamber get this.
Yep.
Ta-da!
I think all the units in the warrior chamber should get stalwart defender passively.
Is that just the +1 to... Wait, you mean staunch defender?
If they did...
+1 to save if they don't charge?
Yeah, +1 to save if they didn't charge a turn.
Sure. Like, we can talk about how we'd want to shape these. Again, a lot of that's still, down the line.
In the weeds.
In the weeds. But it's a good point. Sure, you could take staunch defender and put it down into those units. Right? So, liberators are automatically +1 to save if they don't charge. All the time. That's just what they are. Right? Or something like that. Yep. Or whatever. Right? Your Vanguard guys, all your Raptor dudes and all that kind of stuff, they can have maybe more speed if they're, they could have almost like a
retreat and charge.
Yeah, like a built-in retreat and charge, or if they're not in combat, they could just have a natural bonus to their speed or something.
Run and charge.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Like just various sort of play. Like again, I don't want people to get hung up.
We're not designing abilities, but we're spitballing.
Yes. Right. The idea is just then that helps shape not only what the points of these things are, because in the story, in the narrative of the Stormcast, these chambers matter. They matter a lot.
Right.
Right. They're like
and like you do, and they deploy truly deploy as a chamber.
Yes, the warrior chamber was unleashed first for a reason, right? Because it had to go down and it had to beachhead the other mortal realms, right?
Hence why I suggest staunch defender, because that's what they did. They claimed and held, and that was their point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this also then would give people interesting incentive, by the by, to play in that space. To build
to only run to do mono chambers.
It would give you a little more tension. It would design it a better 45-degree angle.
No, I agree with that.
Where we would create tension between the linear design of I took one warrior chamber thing, hence I'll keep taking warrior chamber things, and the sort of completely modular design of I'm just going to go best in breed from across Stormcast.
Right, which ends up people grab sequitors instead of liberators, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. The second way we're going to do this is we're going to learn from our friends in the Cities of Sigmar, okay? Who did this right. So in Cities of Sigmar, there are multiple very, 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 very similar units.
It's so true.
Okay? Who are all roughly, let's just take an easy example. There's a wide swath of elite-ish infantry who are all some variation of 3s and 3s and neg 1 to rend and 1
and
damage
using two-handed weapons.
And using two-handed weapons. Yeah. There's just a bunch of these dum-dums running around, right?
Great Swords, Executioners, Blackguard, Phoenix Guard, the Wildwood Rangers, Thunderers.
Hammers.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Thunderers. Hammers. Yeah. Come on. I know there's more.
That's a good list. Thank you. That's well serving of the point, right?
Yep.
So the point of that is that the way that, and yet people do use lots of different versions of those. Now, some of them don't get taken. Okay, arguably,
the power parity issue. They do it because of the power pairs that exist.
Exactly. There you go, Tom. Now you got it. So yeah, some of them, like, sure, Wildwood Rangers are probably kind of a miss, but you do see people like take hammers or take, greatswords or take the different things because of the power pair. And that's the next thing we're going to do. We have this challenge of we have all these heroes, right?
Right.
Okay.
That have their own chamber.
That have their own chamber, like, set to them. Like, these heroes are representatives of particular chambers.
Right. Like the Lord Aqualore.
Now, or at least they are often associated with them. I understand in the big spread, they actually kind of, the Celestants and Castellans actually, like, sit above that, and not everybody's necessarily related, and the Relictors sit in the Relictor chamber, whatever. I get it. Okay, please don't. I know how the Stormcast chamber thing looks. I get it. It looks like this. Okay, I know. Please don't actually me. Okay. My point is that in release and often in play, and specifically some of the heroes, they have a very tight alignment to this stuff, right? Sure. You've got the magical guy on a Griff Charger, or on a Torlon, or on a whatever, or on foot, right? You've got the hunter guy, and he's on his little raptor bird monster dog, right?
Bird dog.
I like using all these wrong names. You know what I'm saying? So there is alignment here. And yes, you create the power pairs again here to further put tension on that.
And there are some power pairs that already exist. They just need to ramp up. Like, and what I mean by that is, like, if you look at the Lord Aqualore, he obviously pairs well with other stuff from his chamber, because he can pick them up and teleport them around.
Some of them are way too specific.
Yep.
Some of them are currently way too broad, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what I'm arguing for is we keep a few that are weak but quite broad. Very simple, broad interactions. And this is like your Celestant, your Castellant, the dudes who literally are kind of outside of the command order, the leaders of the Stormcast, the great lords who report to Sigmar, right? They retain these, like, powerful, that is to say, like, in scope of the fact that they can apply to anybody, but sort of weak in effect ish stuff. +1 to save, +1 to hit, +1 to attack, whatever. Like, those are solid buffs, and they can kind of apply across the board, right? But you limit them through things like range or whatever, so they need to be played as a power pair. And then you take your the other guys who are tightly associated, and you have them specifically buff that chamber, right? And they do that in a way that is more focused and more suited to that individual playstyle. So then you can have 5 different aggressive hammers, like your like literally hammers and executioners and greatswords and whatever, like we just said. But depending on what you're aiming to build, you will find yourself selecting each one of the units. That helps stop the just pick the best in breed, right? Always take Sequitors over Liberators.
Yep. Right? Always take for shoot cast. Always take the dumb Raptors.
Sure.
Sorry. Like they're up on the shelf. Yes.
I understand.
Rather than taking Judicators.
Sure. So you can have, and that's a great example, right? You can have like 3 different types of shooty guys. You can have Judicators, and you can have the Raptors, and you can have Castigators, and they can all be different because they all have different sort of power pairs and different ways they're working, and because we can call back to the initial allegiance abilities, then you have this kind of thing that's going to suit a particular play style or build better. Does that make sense?
Totally agree. Yep.
Okay. So what this then gives you is 1, a set of real allegiance abilities. 2, and I cannot understate the value of this. If this is an intro army, you should have these kinds of things there.
You're incentivizing people to build, you are signaling how to build, right?
Boom.
From the actual structure of the book and the rules themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it is new player friendly. You don't have to have like a beautiful mind understanding of the wall of numbers in order to put together an army.
Exactly. Yes,
like,
it's that you
like
can look.
KO.
Right. You look and go, oh, okay, cool. Well, I like these dudes with robes. That's a sacrosanct dude. Oh, I see. Okay, all my sacrosanct units do this. Now I can look through and find my sacrosanct units, and I see, oh, this lord buffs sacrosanct units. Cool. I'll take this guy and this other sacrosanct unit. And now I'm building an army, and I didn't have to understand the other 70 war scrolls.
Right.
It's important to have this kind of stuff in there. And by the way, somebody had mentioned in the comments, and I do think this is a decent point, is somebody mentioned that like the Vanguard chamber is actually a pretty good instructive example of this, because they're kind of one of the ones that's built.
It does this already a little bit.
That's built more like what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
And yes, absolutely.
And the sequiturs are not sequiturs. The sacrosanct are as well, because their leaders, their command abilities trigger the abilities of other sacrosanct.
To a point, but some of the problem is, let me say the difference though with sacrosanct.
Yep.
The reason I think
and Extremis does this is with their command abilities as well.
The problem is none of them are focused on a playstyle as much as Vanguard.
No, that's true. It's true.
That's the challenge.
Yep.
The reason I don't, when I'm saying this, it's not just like, oh, limit it so it affects this chamber. Yes, that's fine. It's not just that, right?
Yeah. It needs to play correctly as well.
Play style power pairs.
Yes.
Right? And Vanguard actually does that really well. Like, the Vanguard stuff actually makes sense in how it's working and synergizing together and working as this very mobile, skirmishy force. A lot of the stuff in, say, Sacrosanct, you look at the sort of command ability stuff, and you're like, what? Why? Why would that be the thing this chamber does?
Yeah.
Right? It just feels like you tried to take a second crack at designing what should be the generic command abilities across the army.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I suspect is what happened, and that's the problem, right?
Yep.
So you can still certainly mix chambers. My point is not, again, just in case people are missing the thread here, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that suddenly the right way to play the army is linear. Just like right now in cities, the right way to play cities probably isn't to just do 100% dwarves.
No, it's not. It's
right.
You do a power pair of Wanderers where you have a Sisters of the Thorn backing an Eternal Guard unit, and you have a unit of an advanced unit of Phoenix Guard with a Phoenix, and you have that yada yada, where you're pairing things up. Yeah.
Yep. So, like, it's not that you can't play in all that theme. That's fine. Again, so we allow people to play in theme and have that be a perfectly fun, fine army, right?
Right.
And then you also, but, you know, like, the quote-unquote competitive build is putting together these kinds of combinations or selecting throughout there and then using it for specific purposes, right? But you still have more of a distinct build-out idea where it becomes a more logical combination of plays you're making. This is my mobile group. They're going to go out there and get objectives. This is my anvil group that's going to go out there and hold, and this is my hammer group, right? Something like, to put it in the most simple terms possible.
Do you think this book that we get, hypothetically, of New Stormcast, let me say something controversial. So let's say that we have another Stormcast book coming.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the first Stormhost book we get?
What, like, in other words, the new book is just literally Hammers of Sigmar or something.
Hammers of Sigmar.
No,
right.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that, sure, on a long enough timeline, yes, that happens, but no, I don't think yet.
You don't think that it's this edition? The reason why I ask that is because we're deep enough in this edition that they could begin to play in that space. And, like, they have a deep enough bench with Stormcast where they could actually, like, play in this space.
Could.
And they go hyper-specific on the rules and hyper-specific, on the chamber stuff, right?
Yep.
And they resolve some of this by, like, limiting the storm hosts.
Sure, you could. I'm kind of against that at this point. I'd love to see
that.
Well,
and that's fine. And that's fine if you're against it. I'm just wondering, I'm musing out loud, but, like, is this so for anybody that ever, like, was into second edition D&D, one of the things that you notice, like, that in development, when you begin to gain, like, system bloat, like when you get deep into a rule set, is you end up getting like narrower and narrower focus like materials and books.
Sure.
And it just makes me wonder with us this deep into second edition, because we're like 2 years going on to, or will we be at 2 years this summer, or will we be at 3?
We'll be at 2. Oh, geez, you just honestly made me think about that. We'll be at, I don't remember. This is the 5th anniversary. How about that? This July 4th is the 5th anniversary.
We'll be at 2 years because it was the 3rd anniversary that we
2018.
got.
Yes.
Okay. So,
gosh, dates are hard.
We may have another year hypothetically before we're going to begin to talk about new additions and square bases.
Sure.
So like this is the time where that design would begin to kick up.
Yeah, but the problem is, I did a whole podcast on this on Undesign on my RPG podcast. We literally talked about this problem. And
it is a problem. I don't disagree.
And that's just it. It's a problem. Avoid it if you can, because it's just bloat. It just creates bloat. You don't need this. You can do this stuff without these additional books. Okay? Like, you just don't need it. And again, there's not a lot of return on this. You're selling to a smaller and smaller audience every time. It's not in anyone's interest to do this. Okay?
I agree.
The only reason they can get away with it theoretically in 40K is because the fan base is so large and because Space Marines are so popular. Yep. Right? Like it's the meta percentage of Space Marines is well beyond what Stormcast are, right?
Well, and that's the question. Are we moving towards that? And should we not be moving towards that?
I don't think we are, and I don't think we should. There you go.
I agree. I don't think we should. I think we are, though. And so that's why I raised the question of, is this the release where we move to that? And that's the question.
My answer is no. There you go.
I hope not. I agree with you. I hope not.
So, the third step on this road, by the way, is individual war scroll design. Because when you look at somebody like any book where you've got competing units that are filling a similar role in a large army,
right?
The next thing you do is you differentiate at the war scroll level, right? You have sort of minor things that are happening on the war scrolls themselves that suit them better to individual roles. So let me just trot out a sample here, an example, okay? This wouldn't have to be the real rules, okay?
Sure.
All right. Just so we're all on a page with that. Okay. Yep. So let's say the warrior chamber did have your staunch defender thingy, okay? Like your if they don't charge, they get
hypothetical staunch defender. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so now Libby's are kind of running around at a 3-up save. Okay.
Yep.
In fact, let's just make it really fun and change it from staunch defender and say that. But let's be a little smarter about it than we were with Petrifex. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say something like
if they're within 6 inches
units. No. Units without the hero keyword. Get this.
Okay.
Because most heroes are already on a 3-up save.
Yep.
Heroes instead get a different thing. Who cares?
Yep.
Something else. Okay. So then we go, and then so that's sort of the warrior chamber thing and the generic allegiance abilities, right? And there's obviously there's a hero that can give them +1 to save. Let's just assume we carry the Castellant, right?
Yep.
So okay, great. Maybe we could even have non-hero units increase their save characteristic by 1. Not just a +1. We set them to a 3-up, right?
Okay. Yep.
Whatever. We could play with that in different ways.
Sure.
So then they also have this +1. Then the unit itself, right? So the Liberators themselves, they could be the unit that have a 5-up save against mortal wounds.
Okay.
Or something like that, right? They could have like Chaos Shield type effects, right?
Yep.
Whereas the Sacrosanct guys, whatever they do, maybe they keep their shield tilt and they re-roll their saves all the time, but they're just at whatever they're at, right? Okay. And they don't have they don't have the mortal wound save, right?
Yep.
And so on and so forth. You get what I'm saying? So that's like you could split. So these are all our anvil units, Libby's, Sekis, so on, right?
Yep.
And we can make them defensive in different ways. By the way, we could take what are the basic pistol dudes out of the I don't even remember their name because it's been so long since I've used those guys.
Hunters?
Hunters, yeah, that's what they are, right? Yes.
Yep.
Vanguard Hunters. they could be the Raptors' anvil unit. Okay?
Okay.
And their defensive way that they are anvils could be something like a skink retreat from combat ability.
Yep. They pull out. Yep.
Right? Where they're defensive by just leaving. Right? They can just make a normal move away. All right?
Yep. Which would be amazing.
When activated. Sure. So now you have kind of 3 different
types of defensive units. Yeah.
Correct. One
doing different things.
Yep. One that can be pretty kind of an all-arounder. One that has more spellcasting focus and prayers and can tilt for offense or defense in the sequiturs, right? So they're kind of more playing jack of all trades. And one that does it through mobility. Cool.
Yep.
Now they all have a role. They all have their power pairs. They all have their unique things that they're doing. Great. Depending on your army, you have a reason to take any one of those 3, perhaps.
Yep.
Right? And then once you do all that, then you do the points. Right? And you figure out where these things lie. Okay?
Totally. Yeah, I'd agree with
that. You could do the same thing with hammers. And God almighty does this army have hammers. Right? I mean, it is...
all the hammers.
Yeah, all the hammers. I mean, it's ironic, right?
Literally all the hammers.
But the what you do with the hammers is, first of all, Stormcast need to be more damaging. Let's just start there. Almost like anything that I didn't just mention that's an anvil, they can stay relatively weakly offensive. Okay? Like they can kind of stay where they are. Things that are meant to crush face, these guys need to crush face harder. And again, remember, we're pulling out some of this energy here, right? Of unit buffs. Yep. So, but like, these things need to... Things like Retributors and Evocators should hit like Mack trucks.
Yeah. Okay? Like Evocators used to?
Well, Evocator, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's not like they got somehow weaker. It just became less super impressive for the most part. Sure. So
they did, like, per point, they did get weaker.
Completely fair point, yes. I only meant they didn't change the scroll, but you're absolutely right. Punch per point, right? Yes. On the offensive PPP ratio, right?
Yep.
They went down. Perfectly fair.
Yep.
So, like, these things, especially the slower, right, that these guys are, the more hard-hitting, in effect, they should be. Also, apply the same thing to your Star Drakes, right? I'd love to see the Star Drakes actually split in 2, where, in a more very sort of strong fashion, where the Celestant Star Drake is your anvil, and the Templar Star Drake is your hammer, right? Yeah. And that guy should come in like a wrecking ball, right? Like you should be forced to play Miley Cyrus every time you attack with that guy because he hits so hard. It's the only song that can fit, right?
So you're saying he should be putting up Maw Crusher numbers?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And by the way, I'm okay with costing him there too. It wouldn't be that much of a change.
Right.
But yes.
Not at all. Yeah.
Mouse bait, I'm not sure what that would honestly look like. I'd have to think about that a lot. He said, do you think War Scroll should really be more like MTG sets in a way, adding new special abilities but not changing the base model, sort of? I would need to think about what that even means. I don't know that I have a full answer to that. I hadn't considered that kind of thing. So, and the core points value still stays. Liberators are the 100 points of the game. They're what everything else is built off of. They stay 100 points, but they're 100 points worth of anvil, right? Yep. They are tough. Right? And they're worth it. And by the way, they're tougher than tough at 100 points. They're tougher than other units might be at 100 points because, again, they'll have less overall synergy. And, 2, they have the innate elite army problem. Right?
Yep.
So we're going to make them tougher so they are harder to kill off. When you get 5 or 10 of them on a point, it is harder to pull them off. So yes, you might be able to body block them, maybe, right? Just charge them with enough, and they're still staying weakly offensive. But if you don't wipe them out, then the hammer's coming for you, and when the hammer of the Stormcast arrives, that other unit is dead, right? Because these guys, because when the Dracoth Riders or the Evocators or the Retributors show up, It's just like, get rid of this garbage. Get this off of my point. Right? This is gone now. Okay? The damage numbers need to be higher.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, literally, we could take a lot of these offensive guys, a lot of these hammer units, and just literally tick their damage up by 1 in many cases across the board.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Like, just, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Okay? Just they were damage 2, now they're damage 3. They're damage 1, damage 2, at least. And, like, we can have extra stuff. Like, you can still have extra kicks and mortal wounds and things like that. Although, I'll tell you right now, in my redesign, I would strip a lot of nonsense out of the Sacrosanct chamber. There's just a lot of, like, it didn't need to be designed like that. Overtly flaky, weird rules in there. Sacrosanct honestly needs the most attention. Followed closely. Yes, because there's just a lot of, like, there's a lot of nonsense in there. You know, you can have them be priests and magical type people in simpler ways. Things like Sequitors and Evocators are fine. A lot of their heroes just have, like, a lot of this extra weight that doesn't need to be there.
Their war scrolls are so large.
They're over designed for what should be a starter army.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So you know, like, speaking of hammers, somebody since Nicholas just mentioned him, yes, the Celestant Prime, right? If the Celestant Prime comes in on turn 3, bye.
Yeah.
Bye to whatever he just dropped on, right? Like, yeah, he makes things go boom boom because he has Gal Maraz, the hammer of Sigmar himself, right? Like, get out of here with your 4 attacks or whatever nonsense you're making. How is his damage anywhere in the realm of reason, right? It's insane.
Yeah.
The thing that where I want them to stay relatively weak is in stuff like Magic. A lot of people complain their casters are kind of overcosted and don't and like aren't double casters for the most part, and you know don't have a lot of good utility and stuff like that. Honestly, I'm kind of okay with that. Like, they should have purpose, so give them things like utility that make them interesting for their points. Okay, so an Incanter having a scroll, or Arcanums being able to do some other kind of buff, or something like that. But I don't like Stormcast should not be the Magic army. That's not what
they should not be outcasting Tzeentch and Seraphon.
Right. They can have Magic like lots of armies have Magic in that they have casters and they're just okay, right? But their casters bring other utility to the battle because they are warrior gods in their own right. Right?
Yeah, and what I would say is that I think that that's where the buffs of, like, the Sequitors and stuff like that should really shine, is that they should be flavored like Magic that is just not dispellable. But it's super limited, right?
Sure. Like, yes, you can, like, whatever the types of things, you can picture lots of cool spells they can do. Most of their current spells are fine and stuff like that. I'm good with all that. Most of their current prayers are fine. I'm good with all that. You know, it's just... Like, because they touch all of these things, like, because they have shooting and tank, you know, and I don't want that, like, they should be kind of overshadowed in Magic.
Right.
Yeah. And all their prayers should just basically fire on a 3+ without rerolls. And that makes it fairly unreliable, right?
Yep.
When in the average game, if you pray all 5 turns, you fail 2 prayers.
Yep.
That's, okay, good. Where we should be, right? But where they excel is in the basic blocking and tackling of the game. They hit hard, they tank well, and they have basic power pair synergies that work together.
Yeah.
And that makes them, like, they are the utility. They should be the, like, I don't, this is gonna translate, but they should be like the Ford Taurus of armies, right? It's effective, it's a good car, whatever, you can pick what you want, like the Honda Civic. I don't know, pick a thing like that, right?
Yeah.
They're a good, solid sedan. And yes, they have some fun things, like, sure, they've got some teleportation here and there to further pick up their, like, they come from the heavens and lightning drop. Obviously, they keep that allegiance ability because that's very flavorful and fluffy. But, you know, a regular teleport is a teleport, and it should be, you know, it's on a prayer or a spell. Right. So it's hard to get at, like, because the prayer will fail 2 out of 5 times, or, you know, something around that ratio, or 1 out of 3, however you want to think about it. And the spell, you're not a great spellcaster, so the spell could be dispelled.
Right.
And so there's a lot of their units are still suffering from being kind of slow often if you can't get, because you can only get that teleport or that spell off. You're not going to have a ton of those things. So yeah, maybe you can move a unit or 2 units or something like that. But a lot of your dudes are going to be just hoofing it. So when they get there, they better work. Like, that's ultimately what I want, right? They should work, and they should punch above their weight by either offense or defense, assuming it's because of that, right?
Because they're slower.
Not just because they're slower, but because they don't have all these other tricks. They're not going to be piling in twice. They're not going to be always striking first. They're not going to be other people strike last. They're not going to double pile in like Lumineth. They're not going to trigger. They're not going to Reapers of Vengeance where like this person fights and then 5 more units fight. Like, it's not that. They play the fair, normal version of the game. They just play it really well.
Right. They're very efficient.
They're efficient. Yes. They are good at the basic block and tackle of the game. Right?
Sure.
There you go.
I would agree with that.
And so it's that kind of thing, right? So ultimately, I think that ends up with a much more balanced sort of and approachable and competitive thing. One, they'll be very friendly for new players, right? Because, and this is how they were originally.
Exceptions.
Yeah, what I'm honestly describing here is a return to form. Okay? Right. Because when they first came out, this is kind of what they were.
Sure.
Right?
They were very points efficient, strong, capable units.
Good at their, like, Retributors were real scary hammers.
Yeah.
And
everybody was on 4-ups to hit, and they were on 3-ups.
Right? And, like, Liberators were really good defense at the beginning, right?
Right.
And these kinds of things were their hallmarks. And then time and the wide suite of abilities that have come out and all these other things, it's not as much that they got, a lot of people talk about power creep. It's not that they necessarily got power creep. That's a little bit of that, but that's not as much. They just got, like, out-abilitied, right? The wide sweep of synergies and situations and things. And tech that's out there that they could run up against meant they were constantly running into potholes in the road more, right?
Right. Yep.
And so what this would do is say, okay, we bring that basic functionality back up to meet all those things. We overcompensate for the lack of tricks with efficiency, right?
Yeah.
That's the and yeah, I mean, that's battalions, like, make them not garbage. How about that? That seems like a fun thing to do.
Make battalions usable. Would you keep battalions tied basically to chambers functionally? How they are? Because, like, they're functionally already tied to chambers. Let me say it that way.
Sure. Why not? Or like, yeah, okay. I would honestly keep the battalion abilities in Stormcast, like, weak but utilitous. If I was going to design Stormcast battalions, like, if you said, Vince, what's your perfect Stormcast battalion look like? Okay.
Yeah.
It's
3 units, 1 ability.
No, quite the opposite. It's quite varied on the units that can be in it. It's, sort of chamber or functionally based, but you can have, like, wide numbers of them. Okay.
Yep.
But its ability that you get out of it is relatively weak and static.
Okay.
In other words, not a complicated thing and by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
Okay. And it is a relatively a relatively weak and static thing, but they're varied in what can make up that battalion. That makes sense? So you have a little more, you can kind of construct the battalion, they have a little bit better control over their drops, and it handles a wider variety of units. I think one of the great failings of Cities of Sigmar was the battalions, and that they were so built on rails.
They were so bad.
And Stormcast have a horrible combination right now of dictated units and bad abilities. What I'm saying is, we can honestly keep, like, the printed ability of the battalion fairly okay. Like, kind of meh-ish in many cases.
Yeah.
Right? But we allow, like, lots of different units in them, and its main benefit is it's variable, it controls your drops, it gives you an artifact, it gives you a command point. All this stuff is useful. And you get on a 1 to 10 scale, you get a nice 5 of a bench.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's not garbage. I'm not saying hand out garbage. Right?
Right.
I'm not saying, like, every unit this battalion gets plus 1 inch to their move in the first turn of the game. That's not what I'm saying, right? It doesn't need to be that. Okay? And so, now that we have like we've come to a point in AOS where the designers have clearly gotten their heads around things like how these Stormhost concepts will work, how allegiance abilities can be varied to create interesting playstyles, how the War Scrolls can work, how we can create interesting power pairs to make it so different units that ostensibly fill the same role will still get selected, right? We've seen the proof in this in the past books, right?
Yeah.
And so by going that direction, what I think you'll have happen is then Stormcast become very good, right? Like that is to say, for what they are, but are held back in a good way by the basic mechanics of the game, right? They hit harder than their points would normally allow, but there's still only 5 of them. So if they don't get the enemy unit down to 4 dudes, they don't take the point.
Right.
Right? And that kind of thing. And so they have this natural balancing act, right? Where you feel like you're getting a good deal, right?
Yep.
Because I think probably somewhere I think Stormcast armies probably end up often in the, let's call it 35 to 50 model range. Like I built a couple armies before this, and obviously that depends a lot on, what your heroes are, and do you have things like Star Drakes or big point suckers in there or not, right? And that kind of stuff. But let's call it 35 to 50 models on average. It should stay there. But you should get the weight out of those 35 to 50 models.
Yep.
There
you think we'll see a new Stormcast book this summer?
Yes, I do. I really do. And I hope this is what it looks like. Because the reality is, if we see a new... you want my honest opinion? They'll release a new Stormcast. Well, before all this...
It would have been on the 5th anniversary.
Their plan was to release it on July 4th. I don't know that, but if I was them, that's what I would do. Right? Like, of course I would do that. Right?
Yeah, it's a marketing dream. And it's been 2 years. And it's been 2 years since that was released.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, does the current situation interfere with that? Who knows? I don't know. None of us know what the world looks like. I don't suspect anyone in that building knows what the world looks like, because that's just, we're living in uncertain times here, right?
Right.
But to me, this creates a good, straightforward tension in the army where it's relatively easy to pick up. It's relatively easy to build. It still has a lot to discover, because what we mentioned of a minute to learn a lifetime to master or whatever would come in learning how you can put power pairs of the different chambers together to get really interestingly efficient armies that have different balances of hammer, anvil, and mobility.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And that is what makes an army stay compelling for a long time. It's why people still constantly put different cities armies on the list. Or, sorry, on the table, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, like that to me just feels like the straightforward design. And it requires no new models. Like this rumor engine we've had up the whole time probably is a new model. A new Stormcast model. But it might not be.
Could it be just like an Underworld's warband?
Sure. Absolutely it could be an Underworld's warband. Or something Warcry specific or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But the only, the weird thing to me about that image, this just bothered me earlier. This is a complete non sequitur.
Yeah.
Why is the ball one color? Is that weird to you?
Yeah, because
why is there no shading?
Or shading?
Yeah. Why is there no shading on the ball? It's very strange. Anyways,
could it be?
Did the ball have maybe the ball had a logo in it, and they had to Photoshop the little you know what I'm saying? Like it had a design on it. No, but I see
shadow. Like if you look at the center of it, there's darkened shadow from the paint.
You can do that with a little quick Photoshop touch up real easy. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah. I don't know is the answer. I don't know why it is the way that it is. Other than maybe it's some type of material. Maybe it's azurite or something like that. Although you'd expect more variation even in the paint job.
It just looks very flat. It doesn't look like gem color over metal or anything, right? Which you might think what it is. At any rate, anything else? What did I miss? Anything? Did I do it? Have we solved it? Have we solved Stormcast?
I mean, I think that would make Stormcast eminently playable. it would be a Johnny's dream to run all the numbers to try to find the right combination of chambers and, you know, abilities and storm host and all that stuff. I don't know. I think that it would make him, regardless of how that lands, I think it would make them eminently interesting.
Yeah. To me, this just feels like the right answer. So I hope, if this book isn't already done, that listen to this. Well, hey there, GW. Think about this.
It is. Like, it has to be. Because if it was on track to be released in July, it's done.
Maybe. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's back farther. Maybe this gives them a chance to take another crack at it. Maybe hopefully they thought of the same thing. Happening.
Say what?
I said maybe they thought of the same thing.
And that's my hope, is that Sam or whoever got a hold of it, like, it's like they were thinking along these same kind of design lines. That's my hope.
Okay. So at any rate, that's Stormcast. Have you got ideas for yourself? Like, again, you notice I talked about very few abilities, because one of the challenges when you talk about fixing a thing is that everybody wants to run to the last step. And, like, one of the last steps is going, okay, on this
what abilities do they have?
What abilities do we have? That's like 10 steps down the line. You got to set all this other stuff in place first.
Right. Because when you start, principle.
Yeah, when you start piecemealing things, right? What happens
when you get into problems.
You get into problems. Yeah, you can't bottom up this design. You've got to start from these principles and work your way down through the concepts. But I would love to hear your ideas. Do you agree with what I said, what we talked about? Do you like this idea? Do you hate this idea? Do you think it would make Stormcast playable? Drop that down in the comments. Talk about it. Share your own ideas. I would love to see them. At any rate, also, as per usual, do hit the like button. I thank you, everybody who hit like before. I appreciate that. There's still a lot more people. Hit that like button. Let's show the people who gave us the dislikes for even discussing Stormcast at the beginning that we can still have a fun discussion, even if I know not everybody loves Stormcast. And that's okay. You don't have to love them. Not at all.
But they're here. And they're the statue out front of GW. They're not going anywhere.
And I would love them to actually be a fun army that new players can play and have a good time with, and that we're all happy to see show up on the table across from us, even if we don't like them. Yep. Right? Even if we don't have the desire to collect them, I'd like them to be a fun army to play against. And what I've described here sounds to me like a fun army to play against. So, There you go. So there you go, folks. Thank you very much for listening, for watching. We certainly appreciate it very much. Tom, good time as always, sir. There you go. Don't forget, we'll do the show this Saturday after the reveal show. So after the reveal, after GW does their reveal show, we'll be on live right afterward doing our reveal reaction. So tune in on Saturday. It'll probably be, assuming they do another hour and a half, my guess is it'll be 11 a.m. is when we'll probably do it. Maybe a little earlier, depending on how fast they wrap up. If they wrap up again like last time, it'll be 10:30. They're not exactly real regular with this stuff, so it's hard to plan. Nope. So, at any rate, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We really appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.